I guess the easiest way to say it is that voice was my first instrument. And
Mm-hmm.
so it feels the most natural to me of anything, of any way to express myself through music. That and maybe like songwriting, which I used to make up songs when I was a little kid.
Well, I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm. I'm Adam, by the way, and this is about you and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Cool, cool. First off, talk to me about where you're born and raised in North Carolina. Is that what I read?
That's right. Is my audio okay? Do I need to plug in a microphone or anything like that?
It sounds good to me.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was born and raised in North Carolina, Winston-Salem. Bunch of my family still lives there. And I grew up in a musical family. My dad's a composer. My mom and dad are both singers. And I'm the youngest of three. So by the time I was born, there was already a family band that existed that I was born into. And we would travel around and perform for other little kids. And
really?
Yeah, so it was a very rich musical upbringing, I would say.
You said you guys would travel and perform for kids? Was it like children's songs?
Yeah, I mean, it was like for families. So it was fun for kids and their parents, you know, like quirky, funny, kind of Appalachian, bluegrass influenced. I can send you the link to the record. It's on Spotify and you can check it out.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear it. That's awesome.
We actually made 2 albums, one in 1989, I think, when I was like, no, it would have been 1986 or 7 was the first one, because I think I was like 2 or 3. Okay. And then there was another one in 1990 where I was a little more active singing words and stuff.
Wow, when you were that young, you were actually on the record at 2, 3 years old?
Yeah, there are like little moments where I'll say things like, one more time, like in a blues in a blues song. I think that was my big moment. And then my brother and sister were singing choruses and I was just doing my best to keep up, you know.
Wow.
But it was
so you were in the studio all your life, it sounds like.
Pretty much, yeah. I have distinct memories of recording with that band, probably the second record. But I remember taking it very seriously and just loving every minute of it.
Mm-hmm. What did you start playing? What was your first instrument aside from singing? Flute. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't count, like, I took Suzuki violin, but I don't even think I got to the point where I was like touching the string to the bow. I think I was doing all the preparatory stuff when I was like 4.
And then you just weren't interested or something?
I wasn't into it. And then I also took piano before flute, but I didn't love piano either. And then I loved flute. That was like probably 4th or 5th grade or something for 5 years or something. And then I really took to guitar. So my dad noticed me getting into the guitar, getting interested in it. And he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he had a bunch of guitars in the house, and he like really fostered my passion and relationship with that instrument.
Okay. And you played what, classical guitar?
I started out kind of more in like a fingerstyle folk, self-taught and also dad taught realm on the guitar. But then in high school, I auditioned for the classical guitar program at North Carolina School of the Arts and got in. So that I spent 2 years in high school studying classical guitar, and that really had a lot of influence on my approach to the instrument, I would say.
Okay. And were you in a regular standard high school before going to the arts academy for guitar?
I went to like an Ivy League prep boarding school in New Jersey, Hightstown, New Jersey, called Petty for my first 2 years of high school, and it didn't go well.
So were you living there? Like, did you move out of North Carolina? Wow.
I was a day student, like in dormitories. Not day student, dormitories. Yeah.
So you lived there?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
Horrible. It was like so not right for me. I mean, I think at the time I found things that I liked about it, but it was not a good fit. And then I
Yeah,
ended up,
that seems
yeah,
like a lot. Like, so you're living are you ever like, I had another conversation with somebody that did that, but they were from like California and they moved all the way to the East Coast to do this. Or I feel
right.
like you'd be pretty much always at school. Like I mean, if you're in ninth grade, you can't really leave or you're like, what, 14 years old. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, it's a weekend. Go do what you want. Are you kind
They
of stuck there?
they were very strict about you not leaving. So I mean, they were strict about everything, but like there was like a boundary that you, if you went outside that boundary, you had to sign out so that they knew where you were, obviously.
Right.
But
You probably had a good reason. You'd have to have a good reason to leave the boundary, right? You can't just be like, you know what? I just need to get some air. I'm out of here. Like
right,
they'd probably
yeah.
be like, no, 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 no.
No, you would have to be saying, I'm going for a sleepover with my friend, and here's a signature from her mom. It was
Oh, so you could have I mean, I guess, how would you have outside friends if they're not in the school that you're
some
in?
some of them, like a lot of kids who went to school there were from New Jersey.
Oh, so they didn't live there.
Or they were boarding students, but their parents lived close by, so they would go home and hang out with them on the weekends.
Got it.
It just so
Okay.
happened that my family lived in North Carolina, so I didn't
Okay.
have family there, but a lot of kids had family like in Trenton or Princeton, or near
Right.
neighboring New Jersey
Jerseys.
towns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just what was the reason to go there? Just wanted to have that experience?
Well, trying to think of, I think that these were like my tumultuous teenage years, and at the time I was in a house with my sister and two stepsisters and a stepmom and a dad, and it was just like really intense all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to be in an environment where I could focus more on. At the time, I was really interested in acting, which
Okay.
is no longer, but I was like reading about different boarding schools, and for whatever reason, the like brochure of Petty really hyped up their acting program, even though when I got there, it seemed totally like they could care less about their arts programs, and it was more what you would expect with like sports and
College. Oh,
yeah.
okay. College prep, sports, that type of
Like
thing.
the swimming program was incredible.
Okay.
um so I got there, and it was all right, but it was just like, I think it wasn't really nurturing like me,
Mm-hmm.
who I am and what I needed to be kind of pouring myself into. So I was very like tortured. But until I went to art school, I was very like distracted
Mm-hmm.
and kind of ADD, like trying to focus in these classes that I didn't care about, and not being nurtured in the way that makes me who I am. So then when I went to art school, it was like the guitar thing was kind of random. It was like the best option to go there because I was too young for the acting program, and I wasn't too interested in the opera program at the time, because both my parents were opera singers, and it just like didn't seem very cool to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so guitar was like just the option that was left, even though at the time I wasn't very serious about the guitar. But it ended up being kind of the greatest thing that could ever happen to me, because it peeled back all the layers of the onion. Like up until that point, I was like, I want to be an actress and a dancer and a painter and
Mm-hmm.
and when I was studying the guitar for those 2 years, it became so clear to me that all I needed was music, and that was not only all I needed, but more than enough. Like that could be an ever peeling onion that I'm like going through for the rest of my life. And it really ticked all the boxes. So it was a breakthrough. I remember at like 16 years old being like, oh, music is more than enough. I don't need
Mm-hmm.
all these other passions to be fulfilled right now. I just want to focus on music,
Focus on music. Were you practicing guitar when you were at the boarding school, or like how do
Yeah.
you? Okay, so it wasn't like you just got home and you're like, okay, I kind of have a knack for this guitar thing. Let me try to get into the school.
So when I auditioned, I think I even auditioned with like a Robert Johnson blues. and I had no classical chops or repertoire, and they were into that because I think that it's easier to start with someone who doesn't have bad habits than maybe
Right.
someone who's further along that's already like on this other tip. And so I was accepted and sort of started from the beginning, and there was a lot of practice, like a lot of very structured practice of classical repertoire, and I really took to it. I really liked the practicing a lot.
Mhm.
In fact, I was just talking to my husband about these practice techniques that we would follow, where you had to like first sing you get a new piece of music, you have to sing through all the rhythms before you can even look at the notes on ta 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 whatever, and
Mhm.
then you have to sing through all the notes in solfege before you can touch the guitar, so do re mi fa sol la ti do.
Mhm.
And then there was like this whole system of how you learned the piece, and structure in other realms of my life had always been very stressful to me, but for some reason in music it was like a match made in heaven. Like I loved the structure of how to learn these pieces, and it really spoke to me for some reason.
Wow. And you went to the new school, correct, for college?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
but
So
you went for vocal, for voice.
yeah. And between high school and college, I took a year off
Okay.
to sing in this rock band that I was in with my brother called Gomachi. And I was like playing rhythm guitar, singing lead and backgrounds on some songs. And we were like really starting to make a name for ourselves. So I took a year off to just focus on that. And I was also teaching at a daycare. So it was like a crazy schedule. I was very tired all the time. And then after a year of that, I was really craving um, I was really craving like just being focused on the voice, because that is the most, oh, I'm getting, somebody broke through do not disturb. Somebody must
Oh.
know me, and they're like, oh, I'll call her twice. Um, because I guess the easiest way to say it is that voice was my first instrument. And
Mhm.
so it feels the most natural to me of anything, of any way to express myself through music. That and maybe like songwriting, which I used to make up songs when I was a little kid. And
Okay.
so there was something just very comforting about the idea of going and studying somewhere and just being focused on the voice. And also in this rock band I was in, it was a lot of like loud singing over loud instruments. And at the time I was really into jazz. I was like taking a lot of jazz gigs in the summertime, even when I was in high school. And then in that year off, I was taking jazz gigs all the time and just like obsessively learning the repertoire and playing through the changes and figuring out how to like solo and scat over the changes. And yeah, I was just like really digging the repertoire. So there was a pull to studying jazz, to focusing on the voice, and also to being in New York, which
Mhm.
at the time that was like my dream, was to be here. My sister was here, and also I had been in love with the city for a handful of years. So at that point I auditioned just at the new school, no other schools, and luckily I got in, and I've been here ever since. So that was like 2003, so it's been almost 20
Wow.
years.
Wow. Okay. So when you
Mhm.
get to you finish up at the new school, and when do you start, like, you've led a bunch of bands, right? And put a bunch of records out. And when does that start? Like, how do you even begin when you finish school?
Hmm. I started I started that road before I finished school. So I would have put my band together, I would say sophomore or junior year. I think it was junior year. I think it was like 2006. I started dreaming about it in 2005, and then 2006 was my first gig with the Becca Stevens band.
Hmm.
And by the time I graduated in 2007, my senior recital, like the performance when you graduate, was all original music. So it was all music
Wow.
with the Becca Stevens band, and it was all original music, which was a goal of mine. And then within, I think it was that summer, we went into the studio and recorded all the music from the senior recital, and that became this record, T by C.
Oh, wow.
My
So that was
first,
all the music that you wrote while attending college?
pretty much. Some of them, like Lullaby, I had written before. Trying to think if any, maybe Deo I had written before I went to college as well. But the rest of them, like some of these were even homework assignments.
That's
Like
insane. That's
Off
so
the
cool.
Chart was like, I was in Jane Ira Bloom's linear composition class, and Off the Chart was a homework assignment for linear composition, where every part in the song is like its own linear melody.
Mhm.
And then In the Midst was, I think, a homework assignment in advanced rhythmic concepts with Rory Stewart. And it was like a mixed meter assignment. The Riddle was something I feel like I wrote for that class too. Anyway, yeah.
That's really cool to be able to
Yeah.
have those songs, and they're good enough, obviously, and they make a record, right? When you finish, you're like, okay, not only do I have these songs that help me get through college or my assignments, but now I actually have like a full, like, snapshot of what I did while I was there, like a portfolio almost of songs.
That was always a goal of mine, to try and kill two birds with one stone in that way. Like, I didn't want to just write something that I would then throw away. I wanted to try and write something that I could use.
Mhm. And from releasing that record, was it something that you took your band and you played around, what, New York City at all, or like how does
Yeah.
that lead into Waitlist?
Yeah. So at that point, I was, taking any gigs I could get. So especially in New York, you're not gonna get like high paying gigs at the beginning of your career. It was like, oh, this place will feed us dinner, or this place will pass around a tip jar, and those were the kinds of gigs we were taking in those early years. We were lucky to find a venue that had a piano, and
Okay.
and so that was actually one of the big reasons why the early version of the Becca Stevens band was accordion, was because it was like easier for us to play
Oh, to
in
find places that you could play
yeah,
instead of having a piano.
totally. And I
Uh,
really loved the sound of the accordion, because I felt like, especially the way that Liam Robinson uses it, it felt more orchestral and full, like it, this like legato, really filling the space in this kind of, um it had like a string ensemble
mhm.
sensibility. And so we had Liam on the accordion for most of the songs early on. And then also, similarly, I loved the sound of pared down drums and percussion.
Mhm.
And also, it was easier to tour when Jordan was not bringing a whole drum kit and he was just bringing a cajon. And I think the earliest version was like cajon, snare. The cajon had like a bass drum pedal on it for,
Oh, wow. I've never seen
and
that before. That's rad.
if you watch the music video for Waitlist, you can see his setup. He had like one hi-hat. I don't
Uh-huh.
think he had any cymbals at all aside from the hi-hat, a snare, and a cajon with a kick drum pedal, but it's been a
Wow.
while.
That's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, obviously seen people play cajon, but not use it as like a bass drum like that.
right. And then
That's really creative.
ironically, Chris was on upright. So everyone else was pared down. You had
Except
like,
for him.
yeah. And in
So
that,
he had the behemoth of an instrument to bring around.
exactly.
That's funny.
In the Waitlist video, there was a part, where we're all in the car, and it was sort of just a play on like our reality, which is like when we went on tour, we often were in the car that's in the video with all of
Mhm.
our instruments, but it's like everyone's instruments are like coming out of the windows, and the four of us are in the car, and I think the like neck of the upright is coming out the window. It's like, but
That's
yeah,
funny.
those were the days.
Oh, wow. And then from there, was it more touring, and just was that kind of like the regimen, like tour, put a record out, kind of support it on the road, and
Yeah, like I was kind of starting to mention, in those days, touring with my band was not my main source of income, obviously. It was an investment into where I wanted to go. And so at that point, I would have been doing a lot of work as a sideman, but booking tours for my band because that's where I wanted to, that's the direction I wanted to go in. And then I was also taking music related jobs. So I became a Suzuki guitar teacher, and I also took a class on this like early music readiness course that you sort of like a music together type of thing that you do with little babies, and it was Suzuki based. It's called Music in the Box. So I was taking a train out to the Suzuki school in Connecticut every week and doing a few days of teaching there, teaching little kids Suzuki guitar, and then doing this like rhythm baby music class with little ones. And I was a receptionist at a jazz club, Iridium Jazz Club. And, you know, a bunch of odd music related jobs. And then doing a lot of touring and singing with the group called the Bjorkestra, which is a big band that plays Bjork's music.
That's awesome.
And just sort of saying yes to anything. At that state, like in my early 20s, I was like, I didn't have the luxury of being like, I'll do this and not that, you know.
Right.
So I was saying yes to a lot to get my name out there and to make enough money so that I could take my band on the road. And yeah, that those years were a lot of that.
Did you say you were the singer for Bjorkestra? That's awesome. What
I was for a time.
Yeah, and her voice is insane, right? I mean,
so they already existed before I joined. I remember going to see them when I was in college, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want that gig, because I am such a huge Bjork fan. I mean, I'm just like, I know every song and every B-side. And at that point, like, you know, I had like a whole, everything she'd ever created, all her little, like the Japanese imports and B-sides. And like, I was like, I know every single song. I want that gig. So my theory teacher was his name is Arun Luthra, and he was teaching me theory at the time, music theory. And I went up to him after one of our classes because he was in the Bjorkestra, and I was like, I don't ever do this, but if that group ever needs a sub for the singer, please let me know, because I'm like such a huge fan. And it worked out. Like a few months later, they needed a sub, and I came and subbed, and then the singer at the time left, and I replaced her. So
That's so cool.
I was already touring with them when I was in college, which was pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, that debut album is so good. Like,
oh my gosh.
And like I remember having the cassette tape of it, like just constantly playing it in my car.
Hell yeah.
Oh, so good.
So good. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. So when does music lead you to the opportunity of like not having the side gigs as much?
I don't remember the exact year, but it probably would have been I do remember when I quit the Suzuki job. Like I had a talk with my dad. I was getting really depressed because I was getting sick all the time, going out and like being underslept, and then going out and working with little kids. You're just constantly getting sprayed with germs.
Sure.
And so it felt like I was always recovering from colds, and that for some reason, like even when I was in college, I was able to get writing done. But during that period after college, when I was working the Suzuki job and the jazz club receptionist job, and then doing sideman stuff, I just didn't have any time to write music, or at least that's what it felt like. I didn't know how to make time yet. But I called my dad, and I was like, I just feel like I'm not chasing my dreams anymore, like I'm off course or something. And he was like, why don't you save up and then set a year aside, and in that year you don't take any other odd jobs, like you can still do work as a sideman, but quit the stuff that you don't really want to be doing, that feels like it's pulling you in the wrong direction, and just for a full year, devote yourself to what you want to do, and then see where you fall at the end of that year. So that's what I did. And that, I remember that being a real turning point in being able to, as you say, like say no a little bit more, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and take myself a little more seriously as a songwriter and as a band leader. And then it's just been, honestly, it's been like um it's just been a constant slope up since then. Like I'm still not to the point where I could buy a yacht from band leading, you
I don't think
know.
many people are at that level, unless you're maybe Beyonce or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, that's still really incredible. So, and your husband is in band, and
Yep.
you've collaborated on a record with his band, correct? The most recent stuff that you've been doing.
Yes, he's in the Attacca Quartet, a
Mm-hmm.
really fantastic string quartet. They won a Grammy for their collaboration with Caroline Shaw a couple of years ago. Two Grammys ago? Yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah, they're fantastic. And that quartet has been around for something like 14 years. Nate joined them, I think, 6 years ago or 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, I watched their Tiny Desk concert. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah,
this is incredible. Like,
they're so
so
awesome.
good.
Yeah, I love, that's my favorite string quartet, obviously. I mean, I'm biased, but
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe a little bit, but they are awesome. When did
and
you meet your husband then?
so I met him back in 2013,
Okay.
and at the time I had a boyfriend, and I was asked to, I'm throwing that in because it becomes a love story, obviously. Um
Ah,
so I was he was in like an ensemble that was being hired to play string quartet arrangements of my music. And
oh,
so
wow.
they were
So,
four members of the Dakota ensemble.
okay. And were you
And
hiring these people, or like that was
no,
done? Wow. Okay.
no, it was very serendipitous. So a composer named Stephen Prutsman, was basically curating this series called the Mainly Mozart series, where it's based in San Diego, and they choose an artist who their
Okay.
pitch is like what Mozart would be doing if he was still alive today, or something, you know, like modern day Mozart kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then he wrote string quartet arrangements for my music, and my dad actually ended up writing some too. They like became buddies, and it's this whole long beautiful story that I'll tell you the whole thing sometime. But long story short,
Right.
my dad and I both flew out to San Diego because he wanted to hear his arrangements get played. And Nate was in the quartet. And as Nate tells it, he had an immediate huge crush on me, but I already had a boyfriend. And then a few months later, my boyfriend and I broke up. Nate and I went on some dates, and it was like too soon. It didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
I was still heartbroken or something. It was like just not the right timing. And then a
Sure.
year later, this is the crazy part, my brother, totally separately from this whole thing, met a guy at the college that he was going to, graduate program that he was going to in Vermont. And they struck a deal to record each other's music in Winston-Salem to do this like bartering thing. And the cellist invited Nathan to play in the quartet of that barter. So Nate
Oh,
ended up
wow.
back in Winston-Salem at my brother's studio, and my brother brought me in to sing on it. And so Nate and I ended up like again in the same collaboration
Whoa.
in North Carolina. My dad was there, my brother was there, everybody was like hitting it off, and the rest is history. We fell in
That's
love again,
wild.
and didn't, didn't part ever again.
Oh my. Is he from San Diego?
No,
Oh,
but actually he was born in California, but only lived there for a couple of years. His dad was in the Navy, so
Navy or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm from San Diego. That's why I was
Oh,
curious.
cool.
That's awesome that's kind of where you originally met. And I
That's a
haven't even
special
heard
place
of
for
this.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is this like done through like a school in San Diego, or like what?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just I mean, you can look it up. It's the Mainly Mozart Festival, and I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
they're
I'm
still
going.
doing it, but
I'd have to check it out because I'd never heard of it, and I was born and raised there, and
yeah.
I guess that wasn't my niche, so I
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah, but
Well,
that's
check it
awesome.
out.
That's really cool.
And Steve Prutsman was like the front runner of it at the time. I don't know if he's still involved with it. But the crazy thing is, those arrangements are on the album that you're asking about. So those were the first 6 arrangements, 3 by Steve, 3 by my dad. And then when we came back a year and a half later to record more in my brother's studio, there were more arrangements added on. And then another, I don't know, 3 or 4 years after that, we re-recorded everything with the Attacca Quartet. And then after 2 or 3 years of working on that, that became the record that's coming out in this month, April 22nd. So just in a couple weeks. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So this record's been like a work in progress for a while.
Yeah. And it's our love story. You know, it's like,
yeah,
it's how we met, and it spans the course of our entire relationship thus far. So
that's so special. That's amazing. Where were you? Just, I mean, amazing that you just had your daughter, but before that, like when COVID happened, did that allow more time to work on this record, or did that change the course of the record at all?
COVID was like, or the pandemic was like, you know, the year of, or the 2 years of finishing records for, I think for a lot of people, like finishing stuff that you started that you never had the time to finish, you know. So there was that one got finished. I made a record with the Secret Trio during started at the very beginning, actually started it in January 2020, so before the pandemic, and then finished it during. And then also made a record with a collaboration called Mirrors, which is Mike League, Justin Stanton, Louis Cato, and Gisela Joao. We made an album in Portugal, and yeah, it was just like.
You went to Portugal during the pandemic?
Yeah, we escaped. It was like right
How did
during
that
this
work?
little pocket.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it took us like 3 days just to get out of Newark. Like, it was so complicated. We had to get a lot of we had to get clearance from like the Portuguese embassy or something, and then we had to get obviously tested within a certain period of time, and then our test results didn't come back quickly enough, so we were turned away, and then we had to get tested again. You know, we were like stuck in Newark for 3 days.
Oh wow. Were you kind of concerned about going outside of the country at that time, or was it just like, this is a killer opportunity, we're gonna go for it?
At that point, all the studies were saying that if you wore a KN95 or an N95 that you weren't going to get it on an airplane.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we were still worried, but we were like really wanting to do it. It had been almost a year, or I guess 6 months, however long, of just like doing nothing and seeing no one. And this was the first kind of little lull, I think. And so we like at the time, I remember Mike, who lives in Spain, at that time he was like, there are no cases here, and I think things were pretty chill in Portugal too, so it seemed like a good place to be.
Was that a cool experience, going there to record?
Incredible. It was incredible. I mean, it was like, these are some of my closest friends. Like Mike and Justin are like brothers to me, and I remember we got there and I just fell to pieces. Like, I like wept in Mike's arms. I was like, I haven't hugged someone or like been able to be in a room with people creating things without a mask, or even with a mask. And it had been so long, and it was just like the most heavenly experience to get to create. I remember the original reason for this trip was that Justin was trying to book some sort of like vacation with his girlfriend and to meet up with friends. And then he was like, screw that. I want to write with people. It's been so long since I've collaborated with the people that I love. So this became our version of a vacation. All of us missed collaborating so much that was the vacation, was writing music together and making a record.
That's amazing. Yeah. Was this new record coming out with your husband and his quartet? Was that the first time you guys had worked directly on music together?
Yes and no. I mean, it was the first time we'd done an entire project together, for sure. we had done a few things of like, you know, working out an arrangement of one of my songs for like a NPR special where it was like a I think it was like a Valentine's Day, like couples and music. I don't remember what it was, but we like worked out arrangements of a couple of my songs. And then also he had written string arrangements on Regina. So we worked together on those a little bit, and he's played in the studio on my music, and I had done some light performing with Attacca, but this was the first like full on for sure.
Wow. And with the record coming out this month and a new baby in the house, like, are you going to be able to like showcase the record at all in a live environment, or is it just going to kind of go out to the world and
yeah,
can...
we have I'm trying to remember if it's May 1st. I think it's June 1st. We have an album release show at Joe's Pub. And so we'll be playing the music live there. I'll double check here. I really should know these things. And the hope is that we end up getting to do some touring for this record too. But I also, I feel like, or I hope that this record has legs, that it's because it's the debut of a new project. I hope that it's not the kind of thing where just in the first year it's relevant and then we can't tour anymore. And I hope it's more like, this is a project and it can tour anytime it's appropriate, you know, anytime it's relevant. But yeah, the Joe's Pub release is June 1st.
Awesome. And is this a project that will continue, or is it just like a one record deal? Or
I hope it's a lifelong thing.
Okay.
I hope it's something that like whenever the time is right, that it's almost sort of like a band, like it's like the debut of a band. Like this is a beautiful collaboration between this string quartet and this songwriter. And when a venue or a promoter or a person is looking for this kind of thing, that, you know, 10 years from now, it's still relevant to book us and to have this music, you know.
I love that. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for doing this, Becca. This has been great.
Absolutely. Thank you for supporting my music and for having me here today.
Of course. Well, last question for you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Absolutely. Yes, make the music that you want to make. If you make the music that you think someone else is going to want to hear you make, you could end up making something that they like, but maybe you're not fully behind it, and then you're responsible for like regurgitating that. Like, what if you write this amazing song, but you're not really, it doesn't feel authentic to you, and then people love it, and then you have to like play it at every show for the rest of your life. That's one outcome. Another outcome is that you make something that you think people are going to like and they don't like it, and then it's like a double waste, you know. Make the music that you want to make and that you believe in and that is authentic to you and that feels like an authentic expression of who you are, something that inspires you, that you'll be inspired to share forever. That's, I think, the path to happiness in this crazy music career journey that we're on, is to stay true to yourself. Bringing it backward.